Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne, and today with my guest, Lisa Schwaller. Lisa is a certified coach who helps overwhelmed working parents rise above the stresses of modern life so they can focus their energy on what matters most and create playful lives full of meaning. Lisa's approach combines the best coaching frameworks and the most effective research-based therapy methods. Lisa also is the host of her own podcast called Less Stress, More Fun. Hello, Lisa, and thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today.
Oh, Marianne, I'm delighted to be here.
I would love it if you could get us started by sharing the story of what brought you into this work.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us who come into this usually have some sort of like origin story. And for me, it was, I was recently divorced and I realized I have two boys and my oldest son, I was just very enthusiastic. I thought I was being supportive. And I'd be like, oh, why don't you do this with school and that with school? And he was in, an older elementary age at the time. And I started to notice that he was kind of like that my encouragement was being interpreted as pressure. And I didn't really understand what was going on there. But I had recently taken what was then called the Gallup Strengths Finder. It's now the Clifton Strengths. And I scored high on Maximizer, which is if you can do everything and you can get the extra credit, go try everything, do the best you can. And he is not. So that really was the first foray into this work, is just really wanting to play the long game, have great relationships with my kids. And I just noticed that sometimes my best intentions in relationships actually contributed to problems, sometimes relationship ending problems. And I didn't want that to happen with my kids. So I got my first certification through an organization that did a 9-month deep dive into the Clifton Strengths. And that completely transformed my relationship at home. It completely transformed at work. I started coaching executives and being called in on performance opportunities. And then I just in 2020, I certified with the Life Coach School and I'm in Master Coach training right now. I just find that the more that I work on myself, the better I show up, the more value I contribute, and helping other people do that. I like to lovingly joke that coaches bring peace on earth.
What I love about that story, and I think people can take away from it, is the more self-aware we are, the more we can learn to navigate life a little more peacefully, right? So instead of pushing the all of you and what your way of navigating the world is on your son, you're also able to now look at how he is a little bit different and his approach is a little bit different. And there's not just one way. I think that's important in relationships at home, but also it made me think about being a leader in a workplace environment, being a coach, having a big team. I know one of the first lessons from me was, because I'm similar to you in personality, is everybody isn't going to do it the same way. And also, everybody is not going to have the same level of intensity and the same level of, wanting to master everything. And that's okay, because everybody gets to do it their own way, as long as they're getting results and getting to the end game of where you need to go. But I think you have to learn a lot about yourself first before you can figure that out. So the reason I wanted to chat with you is a lot of your primary core competencies and focus areas tie very nicely into the series that I'm trying to do around holidays and the stress that comes in with the holidays for most people, the extra to-do lists and events and commitments. Yes. And pulls on us can be a little overwhelming at times,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'd love to dig into that area of overwhelm. And I know you have some thoughts on that and what that kind of boils down to, and some thoughts on how to manage it. I'd love to get your ideas,
Yes.
Kim.
So overwhelm it's an inside job. And by that, I mean, you could have the same environment. Like I like to point out, in some environments, people thrive and other people's don't. And a lot of it is the way we're perceiving the situation, our personality, our upbringing, our beliefs about the world. And the way I look at overwhelm, to make it a little bit more practical to diffuse, is there's all these expectations that we perceive. There may be things we grew up with, things we picked up along the way, things people tell us, either directly or indirectly. And we internalize that with a lot of pressure. And then over time, it kind of informs our identity. So, for example, around the holiday season, a lot of people have a list of expectations around what a great holiday looks like. Like, let's even put perfect holiday aside, but what is supposed to be the above average holiday that they should be creating, the memories that they should be creating, the things that they should be saying yes to. And a lot of us don't really question a lot of the expectations that come in, and we don't consciously choose them. So we might feel overwhelmed that there are all these expectations and feel like we have to, when the matter of fact is, if we really just ask ourselves, would we want to do this? A lot of times we might still say yes, but the overwhelm comes from feeling like we have to. We're feeling put upon. We're feeling frustrated. We're feeling overloaded. But there's just really slowing down and saying, is this something that I want to do in the first place? And if I say yes to it, is it a for real yes? So that's how I look at overwhelm and how to diffuse it.
And one of the things I know you say is that, because I think this is a really good thought for people to really put things in check, is that overwhelm is often a balance of the push and pull between too much and not enough. And I really loved that. I think that's, people can kind of think about it that way. You had some examples. I can't think of them right now. Well, too many things to do, not enough time, right? That was one of your examples. And I think when we think about those things, and you can kind of stop for a second and then ask yourself, like you just said, is this too much because I'm just going through the motions and I think I should do this or I have to do this when I don't necessarily know if I want to do this? I think you're right. I think most of us don't ask that question. What comes to mind secondly, though, is if the answer is no, I don't want to do this, I imagine there's going to be some potential controversy in that message back to others, depending on the situation, right? I see you. So they can't see you, but I saw your eyes light up. So surely that's a difficult conversation waiting to happen, right?
Yes, maybe. Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And navigating that can be a challenge at times, probably. But I guess we probably have to ask ourselves, is it worth it, right? At some
Mhm.
point, we have to think about ourselves, think about our own well-being, and make some decisions there, I
Mhm.
think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's interesting about that is we often are doing things because they're expected, especially this time of year. There's a lot of things we do for tradition or because it's what we see other people doing, and not really connecting to the why we're doing it. And one thing that is interesting is this idea that if there's something that you just don't want to do, is almost having the difficult conversation with yourself first.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, just really acknowledge, like, I don't want to do this, but get curious. Why? Is it the thing? Is it what it means to me? Is it, if I did it 50% instead of 100%? I'll give an example that just popped to mind. So I know someone who makes literally thousands of Christmas cookies every year, and she packages them and ships them to family all around the country. And she does this because she genuinely loves to do it. And there was a year where she was having some health issues and she felt like she was going to let people down, and just connecting to what is it that she really enjoyed was really like this was a very tangible way for her to let people know how much she loved them, how much she was thinking of them. And just having the discussion instead of making 8,000 cookies, what if she had the energy and time and resources for 2,000 and everybody just got a little less? And that was a difficult conversation to have inside of her of, I still want to do this thing. I just don't want to do it at the scale I've been doing it. And also, kind of the other part of that is this assumption that other people will be disappointed in us. And that is something that it causes us to just often will be uncomfortable because we don't want the discomfort of other people being uncomfortable with us. It gets very complicated.
Yeah, so I love to think about the comfort zone that's never comfortable, right? We sometimes think we need to continue to do what we always do because it's in our comfort zone, even if we're completely uncomfortable.
Yes.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense. I love that example because I do think we often get caught up in that, and it's more about the conversation with ourselves. It's more about talking ourselves off the ledge that the world's going to fall apart if we don't do X, Y, or Z. It's amazing sometimes how much we could really change our lives and minimize some of the stress if we just were more real with ourselves.
Yes, and sometimes we have that conversation and we realize that the person on the other side, it's not working for them. And one thing, when it comes to like, it's sometimes labeled people pleasing, like, oh, I'll do something so they won't be upset with me so that I can still feel like I'm okay, is it doesn't feel good to be on the other side of people pleasing. I think most people might be willing to endure a few uncomfortable conversations to have the authentic, intimate connection with the people in their family. I mean, I think that's what we all want. But when we're people pleasing and we're kind of keeping up the act, that's really not as true and deep as we could be. So I think sometimes these difficult conversations, you could also choose to think this is going to be a really authentic conversation and it's bumpy, but we love each other enough to get through it.
Yeah. And like anything else, it may lend itself to bringing a stronger relationship together at the end. I think that's a really great point. So another topic that I wanted to talk about was money stress. And I think there's some similarities in that I think we can get stressed out over money during the holidays a lot of times because we are stuck in the thoughts of, I should do this, comparing ourselves to others, thinking about what we've done in the past and kind of need to keep up those pretenses similar to that friend of yours with the cookies, right? Maybe we buy gifts for everybody and their brother, and this year we got laid off and we can't afford to do that, right? Or whatever. But then we get in these cycles of stress. So any thoughts around, how to manage that a little bit better and sort of get in front of that so it doesn't, we don't get on that hamster wheel and can't get off.
Right. Well, the funny thing when it comes to money stress and decisions that we make for ourselves, one thing I think that amplifies this area of life is it's something that we think is visible to other people, that other people can evaluate the decisions we make. So in that example, if maybe there were years where you were feeling more generous and your bank account supported that actual like money spending, and maybe this year you've lost a job or there have been health concerns, or you just want to appropriate those funds somewhere else, you just want to make a different decision, is just first of all really connecting to, again, just bringing that decision really close to yourself and saying, what's important to me? I'm owner operator of the bank account, and I am responsible to myself first. And just coming down to, this is a decision that I'm making, and I really support what I'm saying yes to, what I'm saying no to. I think a lot of the stressors that I work with, again, come down to this sense that we're being evaluated by a criteria that we can never meet. It's almost funny, like even as the bank account increases, that stress and pressure doesn't seem to go away because the numbers in the account don't, cause us to have those reactions. There's what we expect of ourselves to do with it or not. So I think money stress is just another one of those where it's just coming back and again, getting in relationship with ourselves and saying, what is in service of me and my family this year, and making those decisions, and then dealing with the discomfort that may come when our decision conflicts with our desire or other people's desires.
It's dealing with the discomfort, I think, that people struggle with the most.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's in common across all of these things is, we have it in our control to change any of them, but often we don't because we don't want to deal with the discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that is really like there's actually so much potential and opportunity there when we learn to almost choose our discomfort. So, for example, if it's money stress, it's either, oh, I'm going to set a budget and stick with it, and maybe dealing with some disappointment or maybe even feeling embarrassed. Or we spend more than we want, and there's the discomfort of maybe the regret on the other side or the disappointment. It's almost like, well, the disappointment's there in either scenario. It's at the end of it, what do you want to create? It's just, I think in a lot of cases, we're human beings, we have our ups and our downs. And I think if we almost say, there's probably going to be some discomfort with this decision. And then it comes into what do we want to create for us and what's most important to us.
I like that thought process because I've seen some things where it's like, choose your hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter whether you do this or you do that, it's going to be hard. So choose your hard wisely. It's similar, but I don't know that we always think about both sides of that coin,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think we think about the potential disappointment we're causing or whatever on the front side, but I don't think to your point, we think about the after effect and that difficult situation and what we're going to have to deal with, whether that's, like you said, not having the funds for something else or, dealing with a credit card balance or whatever the situation may be. I think if we maybe stop and look at both sides, then it's a little bit easier to feel like, well, I'd rather have this difficult conversation up front, but I don't have to deal with it for the next X months or whatever the situation. So that's a really great point. Let's talk a little bit about family because you brought up people pleasing. And I think that falls in line sometimes with when we're trying to, make everybody happy with the holidays, everybody coming together. There's certainly a lot more, I will say, I don't know, dancing, navigating, doing whatever with all the different personalities in the family. And we actually, when you and I had our discovery call, we talked a little bit about dealing with people sort of in an unconventional way if we have some family members that maybe bring a little angst into our lives. I'd love for you to share that perspective with people because I love that.
Well, and this goes into, yes, I help people with their stress, but also one of the best antidotes to stress is just being playful because playful lightens things up. Now, I've been a tough sell to fun. I used to think, who has time for fun? That's very frivolous. But I find that when I'm feeling tension, that it's helpful when I find ways to diffuse the tension. So one of my favorite strategies that I'll talk to people about this time of year is the family bingo card. If you know you're going to have a big gathering and this family member is going to say this and you're going to find that triggering, or you're worried that that family is going to do that one thing that makes your cousin mad, is almost, how do you get a little emotional distance just again to keep the weather calm inside of yourself? So you could play a little family bingo card of there goes Aunt Gertrude, saying something inappropriate about, cousin Gerald or whatever. And there are things that we can actually predict are probably going to happen and ruffle some feathers. But then also another strategy is sometimes I will ask people, I'll say, imagine this is all a play or a movie. It's one of those holiday movies that seem to flood all the streaming services this time of year. And what's going on with these characters? And what's your character like? Like, what is going on with you? Is this character of you having fun? Are you enjoying it? Or are you just like white knuckling to get through it on the other side? You get to decide what kind of character you're playing in the movie. And, it's not like it's a magic solution, but almost having these games and practicing them ahead of time can help you realize like, oh, this is this is my holiday too. How do I want to participate? Do I want to have a playful attitude, or do I just want to be on the other side of it saying it's over already? It went so fast and I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as I'd like.
I love the idea. And I also loved the idea when you talked about bringing a partner into it. So, for example, whether that be a sister, a husband, a wife, a kid, whatever. But let's say, everybody's waiting to see if, I don't know, Uncle Harry is going to have too much to drink. I'm just making that up. But, if you bring somebody in to that, and every time Uncle Harry takes a drink, you guys kind of give each other the eyeball, or you made a bet, off to the side that it was going to be, 6 drinks versus 5 or whatever, you guys can kind of be having some fun that nobody else knows what's going on, but you're diffusing any, behavior there that you might have gotten tense about before. I loved that idea. I thought that was a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Because it can be hard, right? It can be hard when we're bringing people together. A lot of times there's the dynamics between grown children and their parents and siblings, and it just, when everybody's together, everybody has their role, and it can sometimes get a little dicey for certain families, and everybody's tiptoeing around. I just think this was a great idea. Both of those were a really good idea.
Yeah.
So you just said that you used to be somebody that had a difficult time having fun, and that you saw that as sort of frivolous. I struggle with that. So I can totally relate. And I know there are some others that will probably listen to this that feel the same way. I think we are kind of wired to get stuff done, to try to be very efficient, to always kind of be, moving and marching towards our goals. And it's oftentimes hard to put down the walls and make time to have fun. So what was your secret there to being able to start doing that with a little more ease?
Oh, that's such a rich question, because it's almost, the secret is just deciding. And it's something that I've decided for myself, and I talk a lot about it in my work, is really remembering that in the movie of the life of me, I am the only character in every single scene. And I really want to like that character. I really want to feel like I'm showing up. And what I started to notice, and again, my children have been the best teachers, because they reflect back to us things that maybe we wish weren't being reflected back. And I don't think anyone can push my buttons like my youngest son. and I'm so grateful for that. And I started to realize that when I was so efficient and productive focused, but the energy, again, it's not what I was getting done or not done. It was the energy behind it. And I thought about, when you're really in the zone, like I think most people have heard of the phrase of in the zone or in flow, the energy is actually, it's very productive and high quality, but there's almost like a lightness and a playfulness and a wantingness. So in a way, I think for me, fun can also be defined as not just playful, light, but also that I want to, that I remember that I also am the casting director for a lot of the characters who share my movie, that I want these people here. I want these activities here. And I have a saying that my yeses are generous. When I say yes, I mean it. And my no's are generous also. When I say no, it's because I have a very good reason, and I mean that too. And that generosity for me is very fun and playful. And I just connect to the fact that I want a lot of the things that used to cause me stress. And when I just remembered that I do want this house, I do want that car, I do want the job, the kids, all the things that cause me stress are things that I really do want. That made life more playful and fun and present. And I wasn't quite as much of a bummer to be or be around.
What I just heard you say is something that keeps coming up as a reoccurring theme on different topics, but it's really around shifting your perspective.
Hmm.
Nothing else really changed in that story other than you looked at things differently, in that these same things were occurring or were demanding of you, but you turned it around and remembered why they're there. Then you felt a little lighter about it. So
Hmm.
I think it goes back to learning how to look at things and kind of inspect them and ask yourself what other perspectives you could have.
Hmm.
That's good. Thanks for sharing that. Do you have any advice on going back to the family stuff and thinking about the demands and managing expectations, making decisions for ourselves that really support what we need? So, setting boundaries with others and even with ourselves. Any thoughts around that?
Oh, I love boundaries.
No, do you?
Not from the way that I think a lot of times boundaries are taught of, if you do this, like, I want you to do this thing. I want you to change. But almost back to that playful choosing, I realized that, you know what? I don't like to be controlled, and neither do other people. And people, do you know that grown-ups are just going to do what they're going to do all day long? They're just going to do it. And for me, setting boundaries, and I learned this from my coaching mentors, is, if you do this, then I will do. If you do X, I will do Y. And that, again, it brings the power to me. They get to make their own grown-up decisions, which, quite honestly, I want them to. I want other people to make grown-up decisions, and I want to make my own grown-up decisions. But for me, boundaries are with other people. If, like, for example, like an extreme is, if you yell at me, I will walk out of the room. But it could be if Aunt Mabel brings that cobbler that I love, and that's not on my food plan for the day, then I am going to say no to myself. It can even be boundaries around what we do and don't do. And it doesn't ask the world to bend to us. It just reminds us how much playful power we have in our lives. So I love the idea of setting boundaries. We can say them out loud or just keep them to ourselves. And also along that, like, if I'm going to have 4 parties in the weekend, then I am going to plan to go to yoga, or I am going to plan a nap on Sunday. If I'm going to be doing things Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, then I'm going to plan a nap. So almost using that same formula to decide ahead of time how I'm going to sustain my energy. And I think a lot of times, as people with a lot of responsibilities, we feel like we can't do that, but that we are responsible to ourselves. And that's part of how we serve others, is making sure that the engine, that the airplane, they don't send the airplane off the tarmac without checking that everything's functioning. We should apply the same courtesy to ourselves. Just really take good care of ourselves.
So you made me think about the topic of holiday stress around overeating.
Mm-hmm.
My mind went there because you went to the cobbler and the plan. And I mean, we do have, a lot of people in the group that are working on healthier lifestyles. And when we think about the holidays, that is a stressor.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you go, there is food that typically falls out of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And we all are human, and a lot of us want to indulge a little, but I think it's important to check in. What I just heard you say around boundaries with yourself is it fits, right? It fits on having those conversations early and upfront and trying to set yourself up for success in that area as well.
Yes. And it's the same thing we were talking before about the discomfort. For example, left to my own devices in the moment, I want to eat everything, nap all the time, watch all the TV. I would just indulge in everything all the time, left to my own devices. And we live in such a beautifully abundant world where we have so many tantalizing things, especially on the buffet tables at the holidays. And really asking ourselves ahead of time, like, how can I feel like I've gotten the most out of this experience? And does that include eating some of these goodies? And then just living with the discomfort of maybe in the moment wanting to indulge. But it's either the discomfort in the moment of saying no, Like, oh, I said yes to, sampling 3 things off the buffet. I'm not going to sample all 30. Or the discomfort of the day after thinking, why did I do that again? And that I think is such a heartbreaking discomfort. I'd rather just kind of go in with a game plan and realize that that little toddler who lives in my brain is going to want it now.
Choose your heart. It goes back to looking at both sides of it. So we have to be really intentional.
That's right.
And really thoughtful about our decisions and understand the choices on both sides.
Yeah.
Great one. So before we kind of wrap things up and close out, I want to give you an opportunity and open up the floor. Is there any advice that we didn't hit on that you can think of that you'd want to share with the group?
Absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about disappointing ourselves, disappointing other people, but we all have this beautiful relationship with future us. So one thing I'd like to maybe offer anyone listening is it can be hard to maybe make some different decisions and deal with other people's disappointments. But always remember that there's tomorrow you, and 3 months from now you, and 6 months from now you. And almost like as a playful game, a life-changing game, is to really think when you're living into your decisions, this holiday decision is, are you really taking care of tomorrow you? Like, is you in a week going to be like, man, let me tell you, you really hooked me up. You took care of me. I love how you took care of me. And just remembering, like, we may be encountering some disappointments and some hard decisions. And when we're changing behaviors, everybody, us inside, everyone around us is going to have opinions about that. Some not favorable. But if you can just remember next week you, next month you, it can help you realize that when you're at the end of the holiday season, you're there with your January you and your January body and your January bank account, and really just thinking, how can I really, really make decisions that love January me more than January me has ever been loved before? And that can be a great counterbalance to all those bummer feelings.
Yeah, I love that, love that, love that. And I think it's a practice that many of us need to get into or get better at in general, is envisioning our future self and what we want that person to look like and show up as each day so that it helps us drive to that person. So I love that thought. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So you have a free guide on 3 ways to reduce stress. We'll put that out in the show notes and all your other links so people can find ways to contact you.
Yes.
They can also tune into the podcast and listen to more insightfulness on an ongoing basis and get to know some of your inner thoughts and the work you're doing with your clients. I think it's all good stuff. So thank you for sharing that with us today and spending a little time.
It was my privilege. This was so much fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.